Hey guys! So in this lecture we are going to be doing type conversion. But before we get on to type conversion, let's just quickly recap on the different data types that we have in JavaScript. So let me just make a note of it here. So there are 5 different types of data types that we have. The first one is string. We have a number. We have boolean. We have object and function. So these are the data types that we have in JavaScript. Now there are also 3 different types of objects. Now what are the 3 different types of objects that we have? One is of course the object. Then we have the date. And the last one that we have is array. We also have 2 data types that cannot contain value actually. So the 2 different types are null, we already know, and undefined, because that's the initialization when we do it for any string or any variable. So these are the data types that we have in JavaScript, different objects and the data types that cannot contain a value. We've already seen something called as a type of. So if you recollect, we have something as, let's say, console.log type of John. Let's close the output, let's open the console, let's run. And the type is string. Similarly, you can pass in any type of data and check its type using the type of operator. Let's do another one, which is a number. So let's do this as 3.14. And then let's also do another one, which is, let's say, not a number, nan. Let's see what that gives us. Let's run. Okay. So the first one gave John as a string, 3.14 is a number, and not a number is also a number. Let me actually do this. Let me just put this here so that we know what we are checking the type for. And yeah, that should be good enough. (3.14) type of. Similarly, not a number type of. Okay, so this should give us clearly on what we need and what we need to see. That's easy, right? Okay, let's try to do it for another one. What do we want to pick? Let's try for a boolean value. Let's do false. Let's run. False, the data type is boolean when you do a type of. Let's try to do it for an array now. So let's call array, and instead of this, let's give an array. You know the way we initialize an array is with the box brackets, and you can pass in comma separated values. So that's how you can get an array, and it's of type object. Now let's try to create one which is of type object. So object, let's create type of a person. For example, the way we created was, we had a name, let's say John Doe, comma, age, let's say 25. Let's see what's the type for object. It's object. Let's check what's for, let's say, date. So date. Let's do a new date. Let's put in 12/31/2016. Yes, it's gonna be epic. The New Year's night. And that's of type object. What if I just give a function? So let's say if I have a function, because we saw there was a data type of type function, and when we do we get that. So whenever you do just a function and just parameters, you can have an implementation or not, but if you pass in a function, it should give you data type of function. Yeah, we did not cover this much because usually functions are just the code block that we execute. We may not need to have data type conversions, but just for your knowledge, data types can exist even for functions. Let's say if we have something as a not defined. So let's say my house. That's a variable I have when I say that variable, which will be not defined because it's never defined, so it's undefined. Then let's try and do null. And that's an object. So that's how you can do type of on these particular data types and objects and see what happens. Just make sure that you understand that for undefined it's undefined, but for null it's an object, and for function it's a function. Now we use type of, but what is type of? What is the data type of keyword? Well, the thing is, type of is just an operator. So type of is equal to an operator, just like we have plus, minus, multiplication, division, etc. The only difference is, rather than doing the computation, type of also responds or returns a string as a result. So when you do type of, it will give you a string, which is string, number, the type of the object. Let's see another cool property that every data type has, and it's called the constructor. Let me write it down, constructor. Now, how do you know what a constructor is? And if you just try to do a constructor on any of these data types, let's say up John, for example. So let's say this, and we will add a string, which is John, and then we'll do a constructor. Let's close this. Let's try to output it. Clear, run. You'll see anytime you do a dot constructor, you will get something like this, which means function, and it will give you the data type of that particular function. If it's a string, it's a number, and then some native code which we really do not understand or cannot print out. Similarly, if you do the same thing for a 3.14, which is the pi that we saw. So let's say 3.14. I don't need it in a string. I just do a 3.14, and let's try to run this. The again answer is number. So this is a very cool way if you start giving everything in. Let's say if we give an array, and there is a reason why I'm taking up array, because I'll tell you why. So let's just do this as an array, and let's create an array which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's try to print it. So you see there's an array, and if you recollect the array chapters where we said that if you need to determine if a variable is an array or not, there were two different solutions that I had provided. Well, now we have a third solution that we can use, which is using a constructor. And how will we do that? Well, it's very simple. Let's try to write a method which says is array, if it's an array or not an array, and then it will have a variable that it will take as an input, which is my array, and it will give an output saying true or false. Now what will return true or false? Well, we'll do a my array, then we need to get the constructor on it. Now once we have the constructor, which means it will give us something like this. Let's convert this to a string with the toString method, and toString is the method that is used on any data type, which will just convert everything into a string and will give you something. So now it will have this string. What we can do is we can just check if this particular string has the keyword array or no, and the way we check it is using index of. So we do index of, and in the brackets we pass in array. So the moment it gets an array, it will check for the condition and it will be greater than -1. In that case, it will return that. So let's try to do and check what happens if we have an array. Console.log is array of, let's say, 3.14. And let's do one which is actually an array. So let's do array of 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems reasonable. Let's clear it. Let's run. So the first one is false. It's not an array, but the second one is an array. So that's how you can check for anything. If you want to check for a date, just replace this array with a date and make sure you check for the date here. And that's how you can write methods to validate if your data type is of a particular type or an object. So that was about type of and the constructor that we have in JavaScript. In the next video, we will quickly see more detail on how type conversions happen.